There comes a moment in life when you realize you've stepped out of the carousel the world keeps spinning on. Not because you made some grand decision to leave it, but because a deeper part of you never truly belonged there in the first place. While others loop through the same rhythm, telling the same story, acting out the same scenes, you've quietly been hearing a different rhythm, a pulse that doesn't come from the noise around you, but from somewhere the world rarely speaks of, yet your soul knows it well. And I need you to understand this isn't fantasy. This isn't wishful thinking. This is the deep memory of consciousness itself, calling you home, calling you back to the state you once knew, before the rules of linear thinking wrapped themselves around you like invisible wires. And today, you're not just hearing that call, you're ready to answer it. It's like waking up in a house you've lived in for years, and suddenly realizing there's a hidden door in the hallway you've walked past every day. Most people keep moving, distracted by the familiar furniture, the predictable routine, but something in you stops. Something in you wants to turn the handle. You see, the life you've been living busy, predictable, repeating, was never the whole picture. There's a wider space, a richer frequency, a more fluid reality that's been brushing against you all along. It doesn't ask for effort. It doesn't demand struggle. It simply waits for you to notice. And maybe that's why you've always felt a little out of step. Why the conversations that light up other people feel hollow to you. Why the goals they chase leave you wondering, is that really it? This is the quiet gift of awareness. The moment you begin to sense that your reality is not as solid as it seems, that your thoughts are not just background noise but living currents shaping the river you're sailing on. It's like standing by the ocean and realizing the tide is not just water moving, it's the moon pulling, the earth turning, a whole dance of forces you cannot see but can deeply feel. Your awareness works the same way. It doesn't just watch life, it shapes it. Every time you place your attention on something, you invite it to grow roots in your world. Every time you soften your grip and allow space, you let new possibilities drift in like seeds on the wind. The world will tell you to work harder, to push through, to fight for it. But here's the truth. They don't tell you. Life bends more easily to a relaxed hand than to a clenched fist. When you loosen your need to control, you don't lose power. You gain access. You stop splashing in the shallow end of cause and effect, and you sink into the deep ocean, where your consciousness and reality move as one. From there, life stops being about forcing outcomes and becomes about aligning with the current that's already carrying you toward what belongs to you. Like a river that no longer strains against the rocks. You flow toward the ocean without resistance. And I know sometimes this awareness feels lonely. You see patterns others can't see. You sense turning points before they arrive. You feel the hum of possibilities in the air, while everyone else is still staring at the surface. But this is not isolation, it's invitation. You were never meant to hide in the crowd. You are meant to stand in the open field, to breathe the larger air, to anchor the frequency others have forgotten. When you honor this difference, instead of apologizing for it, the world begins to meet you differently. The so-called coincidences multiply. The right people find you. Doors open without you pushing. Not because you've manipulated reality, but because you've finally stopped choking the very flow you've been waiting for. I want you to think about this, the deeper part of you, the part that feels ancient, wise, and untouched by the rush of the modern world. It doesn't need proof. It is the proof. The only reason you've doubted it is because you've been listening to a culture addicted to evidence it can measure, weigh, and file away. But consciousness doesn't play by those rules. It doesn't need permission to be real. The moment you shift into allowing, when you stop bracing against life and instead let it move through you, you begin to notice the subtle ways the universe rearranges itself in your favor. The conversation that gives you clarity, the unexpected invitation, the quiet knowing that says, yes, this is the way. So maybe today, is your moment to stand still for just a breath and feel the hidden rhythm under everything. To remember that you are not a stranger here. You are part of the very intelligence that spins the planets, turns the seasons, and beats your heart without asking for your permission. You don't have to strain for it. You don't have to deserve it. You just have to remember it. Because when you live from that place, from the deep memory of your own infinite nature, you stop trying to prove you're different. You simply are. And that quiet certainty, it changes everything. It changes the way you walk into a room. It changes the way life greets you at the door. It changes the kind of reality you're able to touch. And maybe, just maybe, you'll realize that answering the call wasn't about leaving the world behind. It was about bringing this deeper awareness into every step, every word, every choice, until the life you live is no longer something you're surviving, but something you're consciously creating. Not with force, not with fear, but with the steady, unshakable knowing that you are already part of the flow you've been seeking all along. 1. Your difference is your superpower. You know, for years, maybe decades, you've carried this quiet question inside you. Why can't I just be like everyone else? You've seen how easily some people seem to slip into the rhythm of things, sharing the same interests, chasing the same milestones, nodding along to the same conversations, and you've wondered if you were missing something, if maybe you were the odd one out. They call it fitting in, but for you, fitting in has always felt like squeezing yourself into clothes that don't belong to you. You can wear them for a while, but they pinch in the wrong places. They restrict your movement, and they never truly feel like home. What if I told you that what you've been calling out of sync isn't a flaw at all? What if it's the very thing that makes you able to see, hear, and sense what others can't? I know that's hard to accept, especially if you've been taught to value sameness over uniqueness. But the truth is, your difference is not an accident. It's not a defect in your wiring. It's the access code to a wider reality. It's like being able to hear a piece of music before it's been written down. While most people are looking at blank sheet music, waiting for someone else to fill it in, you're already humming the melody. You can feel its rise and fall, its soft moments and crescendos, even when there's nothing visible yet. And yes, sometimes that gift can be uncomfortable. It can make you restless in spaces that others find perfectly fine. It can make small talk feel like a foreign language. It can make certain goals seem hollow, even when the whole world is applauding them. But here's the quiet miracle in all of this. Because you're tuned differently, you can step into dimensions of possibility that others don't even know are there. It's like there's a hallway in the house of life that most people walk past without seeing. But you feel the draft of air coming from under the door. That draft is an invitation. It's an invitation to follow the thread of your own perception, even when it leads you away from the crowd. It's an invitation to notice the subtle signs, the invisible alignments, the whispers that don't speak in words, but in a kind of knowing that sits deep in your bones. The world may not always understand you, and if I'm honest, there will be moments when the weight of being misunderstood feels heavy. People might mistake your vision for distraction, your depth for moodiness, your sensitivity for weakness. But those are just misreadings from those who haven't yet learned the language you speak. What they call too much is exactly the depth that allows you to reach into the unseen and bring something new back to the world. What they call too different is the precise angle that lets you see around corners no one else notices. There's a reason you felt the pulse of change before it arrives. A reason you've sensed the shift in someone's energy before they've spoken a word. A reason you felt called to certain places or people with no logical explanation. It's because you're not just reacting to life, you're in conversation with it. Your difference is the channel through which that conversation happens. It's the finely tuned antenna that picks up the subtleties, the layers beneath the surface, the patterns that haven't yet become obvious. And here's where it gets truly powerful. Once you stop seeing your difference as a burden to hide, and start seeing it as a compass to follow. Life stops feeling like an endless uphill climb. You stop wasting energy trying to match frequencies that were never yours to begin with. You stop silencing yourself to avoid making others uncomfortable. Instead, you begin to live from that deeper place where your unique rhythm becomes the foundation of your choices. You begin to trust that the path you're walking, even if it looks nothing like anyone else's, was designed for you from the beginning. There's a beautiful paradox here. The very thing you thought was keeping you apart is the thing that will connect you most deeply to the right people, the right opportunities, the right flow of life. But that connection doesn't come from pretending to be normal. It comes from showing up exactly as you are, unapologetically, and letting your true signal broadcast into the world. And you'll find that when you do this, when you stop editing yourself for the comfort of others, something remarkable happens. The people who were never meant to walk with you will drift away, and yes, that might sting at first. But in their place will come the ones who recognize your frequency instantly, as if they've been searching for it all along. These are the people who won't ask you to shrink. They won't tell you you're too much. They'll see your difference for what it is, a doorway, and they'll meet you there. Not because you've convinced them, but because they've been carrying the same key. So no, you were never less than. You were never broken. You were never on the outside looking in. You've been standing at the threshold of a larger space, holding the map that others forgot existed, and maybe, just maybe, now is the time to step through, not to prove yourself, not to fix yourself, but to finally live from the place that's been quietly calling you all along. Because the truth is, your difference isn't just your superpower. It's your invitation to create a life that actually feels like yours. 2. Quantum sensitivity is an upgrade. They may have told you you're too sensitive, too easily affected, too quick to feel, too open. Maybe you've heard it so many times that you've started to believe it's a weakness, something to be managed, toughened, or hidden away. But what if I told you the truth is far kinder, far deeper than that? Your sensitivity isn't a flaw to fix, it's an upgrade to embrace. I know what it's like to live with a nervous system that feels the world in high definition. It can be overwhelming. Crowded rooms feel louder than they should. A single conversation can echo inside you for days. A sudden shift in someone's tone can feel like a change in the weather, so obvious to you, yet invisible to everyone else. You're not imagining it. Your system is simply tuned differently. Think of it like this. Most people's receivers pick up the strong, obvious stations, news headlines, surface emotions, everyday chatter. But your receiver, it picks up the faint, delicate frequencies too, the ones between the stations, the subtle harmonics most ears never catch. You're hearing the song beneath the noise. And yes, that can make life more intense. It can also make it more beautiful. You notice the unspoken ache in a friend's voice before they tell you what's wrong. You sense the tension in a room before anyone raises their voice. You can feel the quiet joy in a stranger's smile, even if you never speak to them. These aren't random quirks. They're data, information, invitations from the deeper layers of reality. But here's the challenge. The world you live in often undervalues this kind of perception. It celebrates the fast, the loud, the visible, and in that rush, it can dismiss the wisdom of the subtle. So, instead of being taught to trust your sensing, you were probably taught to ignore it, numb it, or drown it out. I spent years doing that, turning down my inner volume just to match the pace of everyone else. I thought it would make life easier, but all it did was make me lose touch with the very compass that was meant to guide me. When you ignore your sensitivity, you don't just dull the pain, you dull the signal. You lose the fine-tuned awareness that can point you toward the exact person, place, or opportunity you need. And just as importantly, away from what will harm you. So what if, instead of managing your sensitivity like a liability, You learn to work with it as an asset. You see, your nervous system isn't broken. It's refined. It's a precision instrument designed to pick up more of the field around you. That field is full of information, energetic signatures, emotional currents, potentials not yet formed. Most people walk through life missing these entirely. You don't. And that's your edge. Of course, an upgrade still needs calibration. Without boundaries, quantum sensitivity can feel like drinking from a fire hose too much, too fast, leaving you drained and unsteady. But with the right boundaries, it becomes one of the most reliable navigation systems you'll ever have. Boundaries don't mean closing yourself off, they mean deciding which signals are worth tuning into and which ones you let pass through without attachment. It's like learning to drive a high-performance car. You don't slam the pedal to the floor at every turn. You learn when to accelerate, when to brake, when to cruise. When you trust your sensitivity, you start noticing that it leads you toward doors others don't even see. Maybe it's a sudden urge to take a different route home, and you meet someone who changes your life. Maybe it's a quiet discomfort in a business deal that looks perfect on paper, but later you find out would have trapped you. Maybe it's a wave of joy that rises in your chest when you think about a decision, and that joy is your body's way of saying, "This is the path." And here's the most beautiful part. Your sensitivity isn't just for you. When you honor it, you become a stabilizing force for others. Your presence can shift the energy of a space, calm the unspoken tensions, or quietly affirm someone's truth without them ever saying a word. That's what it means to live as a sensitive in a world that often tries to be numb. You become a living reminder of what's possible when we stay open. I won't pretend it's always easy. There will be days when the noise of the world feels too loud, when you wish you could just not feel for a while. That's human. That's okay. Those are the days to rest your instrument, to give yourself quiet, to let your system recalibrate. But never confuse the need for rest with the need to shut yourself down. One is renewal, the other is abandonment. If you can remember that your quantum sensitivity is not a burden, but an upgrade, you'll begin to walk differently through the world. You'll stop apologizing for needing more space, more quiet, more depth. You'll start trusting the pull toward what resonates, even when it doesn't make sense to anyone else. And slowly, you'll realize this. The very thing that made you feel too much is exactly what makes you capable of guiding yourself and others into more aligned, more alive ways of living. Your sensitivity is not a crack in your armor. It's the window through which the light gets in, and the way your own light shines out. 3. The moment you choose a new frequency. There are mornings when you open your eyes and, before you even move, you can feel the fork in the road waiting for you. On one side is the well-worn path, the familiar hum of yesterday's worries, the echo of the same old story you've been telling yourself for years. It's almost comforting in its predictability. You know the script by heart, the same doubts, the same arguments in your mind, the same questions that never seem to have an answer. On the other side, there's something quieter, softer. It doesn't announce itself with urgency, and maybe that's why it's so easy to miss. It's not about solving everything at once or forcing yourself into blind optimism. It's simply an opening, a door to a lighter feeling you've never quite tasted before, or perhaps you've tasted it, but forgot it was yours to keep. And in that moment before the day decides for you, you have a choice. This is the part most people don't realize in this universe. You are never truly trapped in your old story. The momentum of it can be strong. Yes, the habits of thought can feel like gravity. But the truth is, you can choose again. You can choose a different frequency. And that single choice, as subtle as it might seem, shapes the whole architecture of your day. When I say frequency, I'm not talking about pretending life is perfect or chanting affirmations you don't believe. I'm talking about the state you carry into each moment, the tone of your being, the emotional atmosphere you choose to breathe in, If you've ever tuned an old radio, you know the feeling. One station is filled with static, scratchy and distorted, but a slight turn of the dial, and suddenly there's music, clear and warm. The air around you hasn't changed. The radio hasn't changed. You simply align the receiver to a different signal. Your mind and heart work in much the same way. Every morning, they're scanning for the signal that will guide the rest of your day. And while it may feel like you're at the mercy of whatever comes through first, the truth is, you can turn the dial. Sometimes that shift is as small as pausing before you reach for your phone, taking a breath before you replay yesterday's troubles, or letting a moment of stillness be the first thing you feel, instead of the flood of to-dos. Sometimes it's looking out the window, letting the light touch your face, and remembering that you are here, breathing, alive, in this moment, not the past, not the imagined future. The old frequency will try to pull you back. It knows the comfort of its own rhythm. It will whisper, "But what about this problem? What about that worry? We've always started the day this way." And if you're not careful, you'll mistake that voice for truth, when it's really just habit. Choosing a new frequency isn't about denying reality. It's about deciding which version of reality you want to give your energy to. It's acknowledging that there are always at least two roads before you, one that loops you back into yesterday's patterns, and one that allows something new to enter. Some mornings, the choice will feel effortless. You'll lean toward lightness naturally. Other mornings, it will feel like trying to steer a ship through heavy winds. And that's okay. The choice still matters. Even if you can only turn the dial 1 degree, you've already set yourself on a different course. I've learned that the frequency you choose in those first quiet minutes doesn't just color your mood. It changes what you notice, what you attract, and how the day unfolds around you. A mind tuned to gratitude catches small moments of beauty, the way sunlight moves across a wall, the sound of laughter in the distance. A mind tuned to fear collects evidence of threat, even in harmless moments. This is not about blame, it's about power. It's about remembering that you are the one holding the dial, even when the world feels loud. And here's the truth. I wish I'd known sooner. You don't have to earn the right to choose a better frequency. You don't have to solve all your problems first. You don't have to wait for the perfect conditions. You can choose from exactly where you are, with whatever is in front of you. It's a choice to stop rehearsing the same lines of an old play and to step into the unknown scene that's waiting for you. You may not be able to control what the day brings, but you can choose how you meet it. And when you choose to meet it from a frequency of openness, of allowing, of quiet trust, the day begins to meet you differently. People respond with more warmth. Solutions appear without you chasing them. The heaviness starts to lift, not because life has magically become perfect, but because you've stopped feeding the signal that keeps it heavy. This is the gentle revolution of frequency. Nothing outside you changes at first, yet everything inside you shifts. And as that shift takes root, the outer world begins to rearrange itself to match the tone you've set. So tomorrow morning, when you open your eyes and feel those two roads before you, remember this: the old path is always there. You can step onto it without thinking. But the new one, the one lined with the scent of fresh air, the one that feels like relief you didn't know you needed, is always there too. And it's only ever one choice away. 4. Focusing your attention with intention. There's something most of us were never taught, yet it shapes every breath we take, every step we walk. Your attention is not just a passive observer of life. It is the paintbrush that colors the canvas of your reality. Every moment, you are holding that brush. Every thought, every emotion, every flicker of focus is a stroke on the painting that will surround you tomorrow, next week, next year. But here's the thing: if you let that brush drift without direction, if you let your attention scatter into the fragments of fear, regret, and the endless noise of the world, you will create a picture that feels chaotic, disconnected, and heavy. And because you're standing inside it, you might even forget you painted it. You might think, this is just life. It's not. It's a reflection of where you've placed your gaze. I learned this the hard way. There was a time when my attention was like a room with all the windows and doors open. Every gust of wind from the outside could blow through, knocking things over, stealing my warmth. I didn't realize that I could choose what entered my space. I thought paying attention to everything, especially the problems, was the responsible thing to do. But the more I fed my attention to the things I feared, the more life mirrored those fears back to me. I was unintentionally reinforcing the very patterns I wanted to escape. Attention is like sunlight. Whatever you give it to will grow. Place it on weeds, and they'll spread. Place it on seeds, and they'll blossom. So what does it mean to focus with intention? It's not about ignoring reality or pretending challenges don't exist. It's about deciding where your inner resources go. Knowing that what you consistently nourish with your attention will take root in your life. It's asking yourself, does this deserve the light of my awareness? Will feeding this make me expand or contract? Think about it when you focus on gratitude. Even for small things, your mind starts spotting more to be grateful for. When you focus on what's wrong, you'll find endless proof of problems. Both are always present. Your attention decides which one grows in your experience. The tricky part is that attention is magnetic. It will naturally be pulled toward whatever feels loud, urgent, or dramatic. That's why fear is such a master at catching it. Fear raises its voice, and without awareness, we turn to look. And the moment we look, we start painting it into our picture. So focusing with intention begins with noticing where your attention goes when you're not steering it. It's catching yourself in the middle of an old loop, rehashing an argument, scrolling through stories that drain you, imagining worst-case scenarios, and gently, without judgment, bringing the brush back to something that actually builds the life you want. At first, this might feel small. You might only be able to shift your focus for a few minutes before it drifts back. That's okay. The power is not in perfect control, it's in returning, again and again, to the place you've chosen. Over time, this choice becomes your default. You begin to create from a place of clarity instead of reaction. The canvas starts to change. The colors brighten. The shapes align into something coherent and alive. And then something beautiful happens. Your outer world starts reflecting that coherence back to you. The conversations you have feel lighter. The opportunities that arrive are more aligned. The people around you respond to the energy you carry, even if they can't name what's different. This is the quiet work of creation, not through force, but through the consistent, deliberate placement of your attention on what expands you. It's like standing at a window and deciding whether to look at the storm clouds or the patch of blue sky. Both are there. Neither is wrong, but where you rest, your gaze will influence how you feel, how you act, and what you bring into being. Some days, focusing your attention will be effortless. You'll naturally drift toward beauty, kindness, and possibility. Other days, it will feel like swimming upstream. On those days, remember, you don't have to paint the whole masterpiece at once. Just place one stroke in the direction you want to go. That's enough to begin changing the picture. The more you choose intentionally, the more the world begins to resemble the one you've been longing for. Not because the world itself has suddenly transformed, but because you have changed the way you engage with it. You've chosen to stop feeding the weeds and start nourishing the seeds. And when your life becomes a garden you've tended with care, you'll look back and realize every brushstroke was worth it. 5. Connecting with the quantum community. There's a quiet kind of magic that happens when you meet someone who gets you not just on the surface, but at the level of frequency. You feel it before a word is spoken. There's a soft recognition, like hearing a song you've known all your life, but haven't heard in years. For so long, You might have felt like you were carrying your light alone, guarding it from winds that might blow it out, shielding it from eyes that wouldn't understand. It can be exhausting to keep your own frequency steady in a world that so often pulls toward distraction, noise, and fear. But then, you meet another soul who's tuned to something similar. Their presence doesn't demand you explain yourself. They don't need proof or persuasion. They simply meet you there, in that open field of understanding. And in that meeting, something in you exhales. This is what I call the quantum community, not a group defined by location or labels, but by resonance. It's a gathering, sometimes in physical spaces, often in invisible ones, where the connection is measured not in miles, but in mutual recognition. When you're in this kind of company, your frequency doesn't just hold steady, it multiplies. We are like candles. Yes, but not in the way that one burns while the other dims. In the quantum community, each flame feeds the other. The light doesn't divide, it blends, expanding into a glow so wide that the shadows can't find a foothold. I remember the first time I experienced this. I walked into a small gathering of people I didn't know, and yet, somehow, I felt at home before I even sat down. There was a gentleness in the air. Conversation wasn't a performance, it was a shared space. We weren't there to compete for attention or prove our worth. We were there to witness one another. And in doing so, something greater than any of us individually began to take shape. You see, when frequencies align, something beyond the individual opens up. Science might describe it as coherence, a state where separate systems begin to move in harmony. Spirit might call it unity. Whatever name you give it, the experience is undeniable. Your energy feels amplified. Your clarity sharpens. Your sense of possibility expands. And it's not just a personal shift. In ways we can't fully measure, the field around us changes too. Imagine a pond where one drop causes ripples. Now imagine several drops falling in perfect rhythm. The ripples don't just overlap. They create patterns, currents, shapes that weren't possible from a single source. That's what a quantum community does. It shapes the field itself. In this space, your vulnerability isn't a weakness. It's a bridge. Your dreams don't feel too much. They feel like pieces of a larger vision. The moments you've doubted yourself become threads in a shared tapestry, where others nod because they felt the same, walked the same edge, and found a way forward. And here's something deeply healing about this. The presence of others who hold a steady frequency makes it easier for you to stay in yours. It's not that you can't do it alone, you've probably been doing it alone for years, but the lift is different when you're surrounded by people who are also committed to living with awareness, compassion, and alignment. This is why finding your quantum community is not about escape or exclusivity. It's about remembering that you were never meant to carry your light entirely alone. The human heart, for all its strength, is designed to resonate with others. When you allow yourself to be part of a field where the collective intention is to live in truth and openness, you're not just receiving, you're giving. Your presence, your perspective, your frequency becomes part of the structure that holds the space for everyone else. And here's the beautiful paradox. The more you connect with others in this way, the more clearly you recognize the same light in people outside the community. You start to see the threads connecting you to the stranger on the bus, the neighbor who's never spoken to you, the cashier whose smile lingers in your mind. You begin to realize that community isn't just a place you go, it's a way of being in the world. It's in the way you choose to see someone beyond their surface. It's in the way you hold your ground in kindness when met with hostility. It's in the way you send a ripple of calm into a room simply by breathing a little more deeply. Because here's the truth. Every time you connect with another soul in resonance, you strengthen not only your own frequency, but the entire field we all live in. And that matters more than you might imagine. The world needs more of these spaces, places where light is not hoarded but shared. where the goal is not to be the brightest flame, but to join with others so that the whole room becomes impossible to darken. If you found your quantum community, cherish it, tend to it, let it nourish you, and give back to it with your presence and your truth. And if you haven't found it yet, trust that it's looking for you too. Keep living in your own frequency. Keep tending your own light. And sooner than you think, you'll recognize it in the eyes, the words, the energy of those crossing your path. And when you do, you'll know, not because they match you in every way, but because when you stand near them, you feel your own light grow stronger, and you see theirs do the same. That's the power of connection. That's the gift of the quantum community. 6. Observation creates reality. There's a moment in your life, if you're paying attention, when you begin to realize that you've never truly been a bystander. You may have believed you were simply watching your life unfold, reacting to the events that appeared in front of you. You may have thought reality was fixed, like a movie already filmed, and your only role was to sit in the audience and watch it play. But in the quantum world and in the deeper truth of your own experience, the observer is not just an audience member. The observer is part of the script, the set, the lighting, even the ending. Your observation doesn't merely reveal what's there. It shapes it. Think of the fabric of reality as a vast, shimmering canvas, woven from countless threads of possibility. Some of those threads are close to becoming form. Others are distant, still waiting to be touched. And every time you place your attention through your thoughts, your feelings, your focus, it's like your fingers brush the weave. And one of those threads begins to glow, solidifying into the pattern of your lived experience. This is an abstract theory. You've felt it. You've had days when you woke up irritated, and somehow the entire world seemed to arrange itself to match that mood. The traffic was worse, conversations sharper, little inconveniences piled up. And you've had days when, without any obvious reason, you felt light and open, and the world seemed to meet you with ease, kindness, and unexpected beauty. That's observation at work. Not the passive kind, but the active, participatory kind. Every thought is a lens, bending the light of reality. Every emotion is a brushstroke, altering the shade and texture of the picture. Every focus you hold, whether for seconds or hours, is a choice in which possibilities you're inviting into form. I remember a season in my life when I felt powerless, as though life was something that happened to me. I told myself I had no control, that I was at the mercy of circumstances. But when I began to watch my own mind, to notice the story I was telling about my life, I saw something humbling and freeing all at once. I was repeatedly observing the same problems, expecting them, anticipating them, and in doing so, I was giving them a place in my reality. Again and again. It wasn't about blame, it was about awakening. The shift happened when I understood that my awareness was not a neutral witness. It was a creator's gaze. And the universe, this infinite field of possibilities, was responding to where that gaze rested. You've probably experienced this in small ways without realizing it. You notice a certain kind of car on the street, and suddenly, you see it everywhere. You learn a new word, and it shows up in every conversation. That's your observation, tuning the field. Now imagine applying that same principle to the deeper aspects of your life, your health, your relationships, your sense of purpose. What you choose to look at, dwell on, and emotionally invest in begins to crystallize from possibility into experience. This is why becoming conscious of your observation is so powerful. When you see that you are not just looking at reality, but shaping it with your focus, you begin to choose more carefully what you feed with your attention. In the beginning, this can feel like learning to steer a ship you didn't know you were captaining. You may notice how often your attention drifts to what you don't want, how quickly old worries pull your gaze. That's normal. It's simply the old autopilot at work. But the more you bring awareness to where you're looking, the more you can redirect. It doesn't have to be dramatic. Sometimes it's as simple as catching yourself mid-thought, noticing you're painting the canvas with frustration, and choosing instead to dip your brush in a color of possibility, asking, what else could be true here? Or what would it feel like if this worked out? Observation isn't about forcing positive thoughts. It's about engaging with life as if you are part of its unfolding, because you are. And here's where it gets truly beautiful. When you begin to observe intentionally, you find that reality becomes more responsive. You might notice synchronicities appearing, just the right piece of information, the right person, the right opportunity at the perfect time. You might feel a quiet cooperation between you and the world, as though it's meeting you halfway. This isn't magic in the fantasy sense. It's the natural result of aligning your observation with what you wish to grow. You are collaborating with the fabric of existence itself. Of course, there will still be challenges. Observation is not about avoiding all difficulty, but even in hardship, your focus matters. You can observe through the lens of defeat or through the lens of resilience. You can lock your gaze on the closed door or keep part of your awareness tuned to the possibility of another opening. The difference in what unfolds from those two choices is not small, it's everything. So, if there's one simple truth I'd want you to carry from this, it's this: where you look shapes what you see, and what you see shapes what you live. You have never been just watching. You have always been touching the weave. And now, knowing this, you can choose consciously, gently, and with a steady heart which threads you want to bring into the pattern of your life. 7. Stop blending in to unlock your potential. There's a quiet kind of erosion that happens when you spend too much of your life trying to fit in. It doesn't happen all at once. There's no single moment where you lose yourself entirely. It's gradual. It starts with little compromises. You change the way you speak, so your voice won't stand out. You hold back your real opinions because they might make someone uncomfortable. You wear the clothes, adopt the habits, and follow the timelines that keep you safe in the eyes of others. And every time you do this, you close a small door inside yourself. At first, you hardly notice. After all, blending in can feel easier. You don't have to explain yourself. You don't risk being misunderstood. You avoid the friction that comes from living differently in a world that worships sameness. But here's the truth I had to learn the hard way: that ease comes at a cost. Each time you abandon a piece of yourself for the sake of comfort or approval, you dim the very frequency that makes you who you are. You trade the treasure of your own essence for a ticket to the crowd, and the more you do it, the harder it becomes to remember what your essence even feels like. I once went through a season where I thought this was the only way to survive. I told myself, if I can just be like them, I'll finally feel at peace. But instead of peace, I felt hollow. I was present in my life, but I wasn't truly there. I was playing a role, one I thought was required of me. And the longer I played it, the more I lost touch with the lines that were mine to speak. It took me years to realize that the peace I was chasing couldn't be found in imitation. It lives only in alignment. And alignment is impossible when you're bending yourself into shapes that don't match your soul. When you stop blending in, something remarkable happens. It's not just that you feel more yourself, it's that you unlock doors you didn't know were there. Possibilities begin to appear that were invisible when you were hidden behind a mask. Opportunities find you not because you're forcing them, but because your frequency has finally become clear enough to be recognized. Imagine carrying a treasure chest in your heart, one filled with gifts, talents, and visions only you can bring into the world. That chest will not open for a borrowed identity. It will not respond to a life lived in someone else's skin. It waits patiently, silently, for the day you stand in your own light, without apology. And here's the thing. The treasure is not just for you. The world is poorer every time a soul hides their truth to stay comfortable. Every time you silence your song, The music in the collective becomes just a little more flat, a little more empty. I understand why blending in feels safer. It's human to want belonging, but real belonging doesn't require you to erase yourself. It requires you to bring yourself fully, so that the connections you form are rooted in truth. When you live from your own frequency, some people will drift away. They may not understand your choices, and they may prefer the version of you that didn't challenge them. That's okay. Let them go with grace. Because when you stand fully in who you are, you will also draw to you the ones who can meet you there. The ones who see you without you having to explain. The ones whose presence feels like fresh air after years of holding your breath. It's in those connections that your potential begins to flourish, not because someone else gave you permission, but because you finally gave it to yourself. There will be moments when choosing your own path feels lonely. There will be days when you question whether it would be easier to go back, to shrink again, to blend into the safety of the crowd. And maybe you will, for a moment, but once you've tasted the freedom of standing in your own frequency, you can't unknow it. You can't unsee the doors it opens. Living from your true frequency isn't about rebellion for rebellion's sake. It's about alignment. It's about walking through the world with the steady knowing that your life is yours to live. Not a script handed to you by those who came before. The world will tell you that the safest path is the one everyone else is walking. But safety without self is not safety. It's exile. So, let this be your reminder every time you choose authenticity over imitation. You take the key in your hand and unlock another door to your own potential. And behind that door is not just the life you want, it's the life you were made for. You will know you are living it when your days feel like a conversation between your heart and the world around you. When your choices feel like extensions of your truest self. When you no longer measure your worth by how invisible you can make yourself, but by how deeply you can stand in the light of your own being. Stop blending in. The world needs the shape only you can take. 8. The flow of synchronicity. There's a certain rhythm life takes on when you stop forcing yourself into places you don't belong and start living from your true frequency. It's subtle at first, like a faint current beneath the surface, but the more you align with it, the more undeniable it becomes. The things that used to feel rare or lucky begin to show up with almost uncanny precision. You think of someone you haven't spoken to in years, and they call that afternoon. You take a different route home for no real reason, and stumble across the exact opportunity you'd been quietly hoping for. You overhear a conversation that contains the answer to a question you didn't even realize you were asking out loud. Most people call these coincidences, some call them luck, but when you're in alignment, they feel less like chance and more like inevitability, like they were always there, just waiting for you to step into the wavelength where they could meet you. Here's what I've come to understand. Synchronicities don't arrive from somewhere else. They're not outside forces suddenly dropping into your life. They're part of the invisible landscape you're already walking through hidden, until your state of being shifts enough to recognize them. It's like tuning an old radio. The stations are all broadcasting at once, but you can only hear the one your dial is set to. Change the frequency, and suddenly, you hear a song that's been playing all along. Your life works the same way. When you're misaligned living from fear, self-doubt, or someone else's expectations, you're tuned to a channel filled with static. You might catch the faint hint of something good now and then, but it's distorted, muffled. The opportunities are still there, but you can't lock onto them. But when you live from your true frequency, when your thoughts, emotions, and choices line up with what genuinely matters to you, you turn the dial, and the moment you do, the music comes in clear. The right place, right time moments. Stop being rare miracles and start becoming your new normal. This doesn't mean life becomes perfect. Challenges still arise. And not every door that opens is one you'll walk through. But even the difficulties start to feel different. You begin to see them not as random misfortunes, but as part of the same current that's carrying you forward like bends in a river, that you trust will lead somewhere meaningful, even if you can't see around the corner. Synchronicity is a language. It's how life speaks to you when you're willing to listen without demanding it. Speak in sentences you already understand. Sometimes it's obvious, a job offer that aligns perfectly with your skills, a chance meeting that leads to a lifelong friendship. Other times it's quieter, a book falling off a shelf at your feet, a single sentence in a movie that lingers in your mind for days, a sudden change of plans that places you somewhere you never would have gone otherwise. The key is not to chase synchronicities like trophies, but to notice them as confirmation. They're not the goal, they're the evidence that you're in the flow. And here's the deeper truth: you can't fake your way into this flow. You can't force synchronicities to appear by trying to act aligned while living in contradiction to your deeper truth. Life responds to the frequency you actually hold, not the one you perform. This is why living in alignment is less about striving and more about allowing. It's about clearing the interference, shedding the roles, beliefs, and obligations that keep you tuned to noise so your natural frequency can hum without distortion. When you do that, you begin to walk through the world differently. You move with a kind of quiet confidence, not because you know exactly what's going to happen, but because you trust the way life arranges itself when you show up as your real self. There's a softness to this trust. You stop gripping so tightly at outcomes. You stop thinking you have to knock on every door. You realize some doors are already open. You just needed to be in the right hallway to see them. And that's the beauty of synchronicity. It saves you from wasting energy on paths that aren't yours. It redirects you gently, almost invisibly, until you're standing exactly where you need to be, often without even realizing you were being guided. I've learned to see these moments as a conversation between me and life. I take a step in alignment, and life responds with a sign, a meeting, an unexpected opening. I follow that, and another appears. Over time, this back and forth builds a relationship of trust, not just trust in life, but trust in myself to recognize and respond to its signals. The more you live this way, the more you realize that synchronicity isn't rare at all. What's rare is being present enough to notice it. What's rare is being courageous enough to act on it when it appears. And once you start, it's hard to go back to the old way, the way of pushing, forcing, and overthinking every move. You see how much more graceful it feels to be carried by the current instead of swimming against it. So if you've been noticing those little coincidences lately, pay attention, not with suspicion, not with an urge to control them, but with quiet curiosity. They're not accidents. They're the sound of the music getting clearer. And maybe, just maybe, they're proof that you've finally tuned in to the life that's been waiting for you all along. 9. Your role in collective transformation. It's easy to think of your personal growth as something private, something you do for your own peace, your own freedom, your own healing. And in one sense, that's true. The journey inward is deeply personal. No one else can take those steps for you. But here's the quiet truth that often goes unnoticed. Every shift you make in your inner world ripples out into the shared field we all live in. You are never changing alone. Imagine the collective consciousness as an ocean, a single, vast body of water that every human being swims in. Your thoughts, your choices, your emotional states are like currents in that ocean. Most days, we move through those waters without realizing how much they influence the flow around us. When you choose fear, when you collapse into scarcity, judgment, or hopelessness, you send out waves that others can feel, even if they never know why. And when you choose expansion, when you hold the frequency of openness, compassion, and possibility, you do the same. You create a current that quietly supports anyone who drifts near it. This isn't about pressure or responsibility. It's about awareness. It's about understanding that the work you do to free yourself from the grip of fear doesn't end with you. It feeds into a field that belongs to all of us. I remember a time when I felt powerless to make any difference in the world. I thought big change only happened through loud actions, protests, speeches, revolutions. I couldn't see how the quiet work of healing my own wounds could possibly matter. But over time, I began to notice something subtle the more I lived from my own wholeness. The more people around me began to soften. Conversations shifted, tensions eased. Doors to understanding opened without anyone forcing them. It wasn't that I was telling anyone what to do or think. It was that my presence was different, and that difference gave others permission to feel different too. You've likely experienced this yourself. You've been in the company of someone who feels calm, grounded, at ease, and you felt yourself settle without trying. Or you've been around someone anxious or angry and felt that energy pull at your own state. We influence one another constantly, whether we mean to or not. This is why your personal alignment matters far beyond your own life. Every time you choose expansion over fear, you're sending out a stabilizing signal into the collective field. You're making it a little easier for the next person to choose the same. Think of it like hiking a difficult trail. If no one's walked it before, it's tangled with branches, steep with loose stones. But if someone walks it ahead of you, clearing a few branches, pressing a path into the earth, it's easier for you to follow. Every time you hold your frequency in a world that wants to pull you into fear, you're pressing that path into the ground. And here's the beautiful part. You don't have to be perfect to help. This isn't about staying in some constant state of joy or never feeling doubt again. It's about returning again and again to the frequency you choose to live from. It's about knowing that when you fall, your choice to get back up sends out as much light as if you'd never stumbled at all. Collective transformation doesn't happen in a single sweeping moment. It happens in millions of small, personal moments that quietly link together. A mother chooses patience instead of anger. A friend listens without judgment. A stranger holds the door with a genuine smile. These seem small, but together, they change the atmosphere we all breathe. You might never see the direct results of the ripples you send. That's not the point. The point is to live in a way that makes the collective waters clearer, steadier, kinder, because you know, in some corner of your being, that we rise together or not at all. And there's something profoundly comforting about that. You don't have to carry the whole world. You just have to tend to your part of the field, trusting that others are tending to theirs. Your choice to stand in openness gives strength to those who are wavering. Their choice to stand in openness gives strength to you when you need it. So, the next time you feel alone in your growth, remember, you are not just shaping your own life. You are helping to shape the shared reality we all inhabit. And in this shared reality, your courage to live from expansion is a gift to everyone who crosses your path, whether they know it or not. This is your role in collective transformation, not to push or persuade, not to demand the world change on your timetable, but to become a steady, living reminder that another way of being is possible and that it's already here, in the choices we make each moment. 10. You are connected to quantum potential. There are possibilities in this life that don't appear on the maps most people follow. They can't be found in the neatly drawn borders of what's realistic or practical. They live beyond the edges, out where the lines dissolve into open space. And most will never walk that far. Not because they couldn't, but because they've been taught the field in front of them is all there is. They see the meadow, and they think it's the end of the world. They build their homes there, plant their gardens, and never question what might lie past the horizon. But you've always felt something calling from beyond that field. You've sensed that there is more, not in a restless way, but in a quiet, knowing way. It's like catching the faint glimmer of water in the distance, and somehow knowing it's an ocean, even if no one else believes it's there. This is what it means to be connected to quantum potential. It's the awareness that life is not a fixed landscape but a living, breathing field of infinite possibilities, each one waiting for the right alignment of attention, intention, and courage to come into form. The world you've been taught to see is only one configuration of that field. It's like a single frame from an endless reel of film. Most people stare at that frame so intently they forget there's more to the story, that the reel can move, that new frames can appear at any moment. Your gift is that you can feel those other frames. You sense the unseen doors, the hidden threads connecting one moment to the next. You notice the shifts in energy that hint at a change before it becomes visible. And because you can sense them, you have the chance to step toward them before anyone else even knows they exist. But here's the catch. Quantum potential doesn't shout. It whispers. It speaks in gentle nudges, in small invitations that are easy to dismiss if you're waiting for certainty. To walk toward it, you have to be willing to leave the well-worn path. You have to be comfortable walking with more faith than proof. You have to trust the compass of your inner resonance more than the maps that have been handed to you. And yes, there will be moments when that feels lonely. Moments when others look at you with doubt in their eyes. When they ask why you'd risk leaving the safe and familiar for something that may or may not be there. In those moments, you must remember their doubt is not your truth. Their horizon is not your limit. The field of quantum potential responds not to skepticism but to openness. The more you allow yourself to imagine, the more you allow yourself to believe that other realities are possible, the more the field reveals itself to you. It's like standing at the edge of a dense fog. If you insist on seeing the whole road before you take a step, you'll stay where you are forever. But if you take one step in trust, the fog lifts just enough to reveal the next stone, and then the next, and slowly, the road appears under your feet, not because it wasn't there, but because it was waiting for your movement to bring it into view. When you live connected to quantum potential, you stop needing to force outcomes. You understand that your role is not to control the field, but to align with it, to become a match for the possibilities you want to experience. You tune your frequency to the reality you wish to live in, and the field responds by showing you the doorways that lead there. And here's the beautiful paradox. The more you step into this space, the less it's about getting something, and the more it's about becoming something. You begin to realize that every possibility you touch isn't just out there, it's in you. You don't just find new paths, you find new parts of yourself. When others stop at the meadow, you keep walking not because you think you're better, but because you can't ignore the pull of the horizon. And with every step you take, you prove to yourself that the edges of the known world are not the end, they're the beginning. One day, someone still standing in the meadow will see you return from beyond the horizon. They'll see the way your eyes carry the reflection of oceans they didn't know existed. And maybe, just maybe, they'll take a step past their own edge because of you. That's the quiet power of living connected to quantum potential. It's not about convincing anyone to follow you. It's about walking in such a way that your very presence expands the map for everyone you meet. So keep walking, keep trusting, keep letting the horizon pull you forward. The possibilities you feel in your bones are real, and they've been waiting for you to remember them. 11. Practicing quantum observation. There is a subtle art to noticing when you've slipped back into the old storyline. It happens quietly, one thought at a time, one familiar emotion, settling in like a shadow at the edge of your day. You catch yourself replaying the same loops, the same worries, the same definitions of who you are and what's possible. And for a moment, it feels as if the walls are closing in. But quantum observation invites you to pause right there, not to fight the walls, not to tear them down, but to remember that they are not the whole room. In the quantum view, you are never trapped inside the story. You are simply standing in one perspective, one vantage point among infinite others. And perspective is not fixed. It can shift with the slightest movement of awareness, like stepping 2 feet to the left and suddenly seeing a doorway that was hidden from view. This is why fighting the old story often makes it stronger. Resistance keeps you in the same place, staring at the same wall, feeding it with your focus. But observation, gentle, aware, non-judgmental, allows you to step aside. You become less interested in what the wall is made of, and more curious about what it might be blocking. It's a bit like standing in front of a curtain in a theater. You could spend years studying the curtain's fabric, pulling at its threads, arguing about its color with the people around you. Or you could simply reach out, slide it aside, and see what's been waiting on the stage the entire time. Practicing quantum observation is exactly that shift. It begins with awareness. You feel the pull of an old belief. Perhaps I'm not ready. Or, it's always been this way. Instead of wrestling with it, you notice it. You name it softly, as if speaking to a child. There's that thought again. You acknowledge its presence, but you don't climb into it. Then comes the pivot. Not a dramatic leap, not a forced affirmation, but a subtle turning of your inner gaze. You remember that for every reality your mind can describe, there are countless others equally real in the field of potential. You remind yourself that you can shift not by effort, but by allowing. From this new vantage point, the limits of the old story lose their solidity. You realize they were never concrete, only patterns of focus repeated over time. And once you've stepped outside them, you can see the open expanse beyond. Here's the beauty of it. You don't need to destroy the old reality. In fact, you can leave it exactly as it is. Because the moment you choose to stand in a different frequency, you begin interacting with a different set of possibilities. You walk through the door, and the wall that seems so permanent fades from your awareness, not because it has vanished from the world, but because it no longer defines yours. At first, this practice may feel delicate. You might step into the expanded space, and then slip back into the old narrative without noticing. That's okay. The power lies in returning. Every time you remember to shift your position, you strengthen your ability to do it with more ease. Over time, it becomes second nature. You begin catching the moment your thoughts start narrowing, and instead of spiraling into them, you step back into the wider view. Life starts to feel less like a fight and more like a dance. You stop trying to bulldoze the obstacles and instead find the openings that were always there. And something else happens. Too, the more you live this way, the more the walls of life seem to rearrange themselves. People around you may notice opportunities appearing for you, synchronicities lining up in your favor. They might call it luck, but you'll know it's not luck. It's alignment. It's the natural outcome of standing where the doors are visible. Practicing quantum observation is not about denying the reality you're in. It's about remembering you are never only in one reality. There is always more space, more light, more possibility than your current perspective can show you. And you hold the quiet power to choose where you stand. So the next time you feel trapped inside the same old story, don't push harder. Don't fight the wall. Just shift your stance. Step to the side. Let the curtain slide. The door has always been there. It's been waiting for you to see it. The quiet power of remembering you were never sent here to become like them. You were never meant to mold yourself into a shape that would fit neatly into the expectations of a world that forgot its own depth. You are here for something far more ancient, far more essential. You are here to remember what humanity has misplaced, that consciousness is not merely the witness to life, it is the very current that creates it. When you choose the frequency of expansion, you do more than shift your own experience. You carve open a passage, a luminous corridor in the unseen, and that passage becomes available to everyone who comes into contact with your field. You may never meet most of them. You may never hear their names. But the moment they stand near the resonance you hold, something inside them will stir, like a seed catching the first scent of rain. This is why your difference matters. This is why you must stop apologizing for it. The day you stop asking permission to be yourself, you send a clear, unshakable signal into the fabric of reality. I am ready to live as I truly am. From that moment on, the shift is quiet but absolute. You no longer need to persuade, to defend, to explain. The proof is in your presence. It's in the way your eyes soften, even when the world is hard. It's in the way you move through chaos without letting it dictate your rhythm. It's in the stillness you carry, the kind that speaks louder than any argument could. Reality responds to this kind of presence, not with fireworks or grand announcements, but with a slow, undeniable rearranging. Paths that were once blocked open with surprising ease, people who were meant to find you appear without struggle. The world begins to bend, ever so slightly, toward the shape of your truth. And this is the invitation one you extend without words. By living this way, you're not telling others what to do. You're not standing on a stage demanding change. You are simply being the proof that life is more malleable than the limits we've been taught. That freedom is not something we wait for or beg for, it's something we inhabit, breath by breath. When you live in alignment with this remembering, you don't just free yourself. You become the gentle reminder the world has been waiting for. You become a living doorway through which others can walk back into themselves. So when you wake tomorrow, perhaps you will feel it again, that pull to shrink, to blend, to follow the familiar script. And perhaps, in that moment, you'll pause, you'll take a breath, you'll remember that you are not here to fit in. You are here to tune in, to the frequency of who you really are, to the reality that was always possible, to the quiet revolution that begins, not in the streets, but in the space between your thoughts, and from that space, without effort, without force, the whole world begins to shift. Not because you told it to, but because you finally chose to live the truth it had been waiting to hear.